Jordan, let me ask you this. Would you consider yourself happy today?
No.
And when's the last time you were happy?
I was happy a little bit last week for a couple of hours. I'm in too much pain and to be happy still. I mean, it's not like I don't appreciate what's good about my life. I do appreciate it, and I remember it consciously all the time. And my wife and I remind each other about it constantly. And so I see that all very clearly, and I can see where the sources of happiness could lie, but I have a lot of neurological damage by all appearances, and it produces quite a lot of pain. And so I'm overcoming that, I think, bit by bit. Like, I have a very structured day. So I get up and I have a sauna, and then I walk for 6 miles, and then I exercise for an hour quite intensely with weights. And I dance a little bit to music because while I'm trying to regain control over all my extremities, and that's all working quite well. And then I have the podcasts and so forth. And so I have a well-structured life, but it's still not to the point where I would say I was happy. I'd like to get there. Healthy really is really what I'd want. Healthy and fully functioning. I'm running at about 50% now, and it was down to about 5 for a long time. 50 is a lot better.
No, and that's great to hear. What's the longest, like, if you were to put outcomes of a life, like you would say priorities? Okay, happiness, I'm living a happy life, fulfilled life, healthy life. How would you rank those 3 for someone like you?
Oh, well, healthy is by far the most important. But then I wouldn't use those criteria. Like, I think I'm very pleased if I can say things that I believe to be true. I've written about this, said pursue what's meaningful and not what's expedient. And I would also say that it's useful to say what is true rather than to craft your words so that you get what you want. And part of the reason for that, there's many reasons, but part of the reason for that is that it's unbelievably adventurous. You have no idea what will happen if you just say what you think. And my experience has been that the consequences are absolutely overwhelming. Always, constantly. And, when I go into a talk like this, I don't have an outcome in mind. I don't want to make a fool of myself. I don't want to say something stupid. I want to engage in an interesting conversation, but I'm not trying. I don't have an agenda other than that, but it's just to say what I feel in the moment as clearly as I possibly can. It's so adventurous to do that. And it's far better than pursuing a more narrow goal that might be wrong. And so there's an adventure there and I think one of the things I love about the long form video format is that it enables people to engage in the mutual exploration of truth, a revelation of truth, the discovery of truth. And it's so interesting too that people find that compelling and exciting and watch it and want it.
Do you ever catch yourself asking, oh man, maybe I'm in too deep of being this worried genius and I've lost a bit of my happy simpleton?
Yeah, well, I certainly experienced that when my health broke down. And the reason for that was that I not only did I get sick, my life fell apart because I couldn't do anything that I used to be able to do. I couldn't listen to music. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I couldn't think. I couldn't do any of them because everything that I had done was complex and difficult, all the things that I engaged in. And what I did realize was that left me vulnerable on a certain front, because if I wasn't in peak health, let's say, I wouldn't be able to do those things. And so, that's why I'm walking now, for example. I said I walk 6 miles a day, and I do that every day. It's very simple. And I've played a lot of ping pong, and I've always liked that, but I never played that much, but I liked that. And there is some utility in having things around that are rewarding and good for you, that are less complex. I would say, though, that with regards to the conflict between, let's say, miserable wisdom and happy ignorance, is that there's different forms of rewards to be found in different places. You can think about this even in terms of personality. One major personality dimension is extroversion. And the reason for that is that we have a pleasure circuit, and how active that is varies between people. That's what causes variation in extroversion. And we generally equate happiness with the activation of the circuitry that's associated with extroversion. And drugs like cocaine and amphetamines activate that circuit. But there's another personality dimension, which is openness. And openness is the creativity dimension, and there's pleasure to be derived from that as well. And so that's philosophical exploration and literary experience. And I suppose when you go to a movie, you experience a blend of those two things, especially if it's a rather complex movie. So there's different forms of engagement or pleasure to be found, and some of them are more akin to happiness, and some of them are more akin to meaning. And sometimes they come into conflict, but I think all things considered, they work best when they're working together. And I do strive diligently to and I think that this has really been brought home to me. Look, I couldn't sit down. I literally couldn't sit down for almost a year. And so I lost the ability to sit down. I had fantasies for hours of being able to sit by a fireplace and just not move, because I had this condition called akathisia, which is, I learned how valuable it is to be able to sit down. And now when I sit down and nothing is happening, I'm taking stock of that and noticing what an unbelievable gift that is. And it is really useful to maintain your ability to see what you have that you've taken for granted, because you can lose everything. You can lose things you don't even know you have. I had no idea that you could ever lose the ability just to sit down, but you can. I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm more appreciative, I would say, of simpler things than I was. I'm more appreciative of other people than I was. I'm probably more grateful, all things considered, than I was. And hopefully that will continue developing. I have no contempt for happiness. I tell people, don't pursue happiness, pursue meaning. And I think that's true. But if happiness comes along, it should be welcomed. And if you're ever somewhere where that's happening, you should notice it and be grateful for it and enjoy it. And that's for sure. When someone stops me on the street, and that happens all the time, they're usually shy and tentative about stopping me, and usually very, very polite, almost invariably. So it's never a real imposition. And I always ask people, if they say that they watched a lecture and it helped, I always ask them why, what helped. And so I had 3 guys this week tell me, they said, well, I was comparing myself to what other people had achieved and always coming up short. And that was hurting me. It was making me envious, let's say, and disheartening me. But then I learned to reward myself for small improvements over. thought, well, that's really important, because you are comparing yourself to the right person then, and now you're rewarding yourself, you're encouraging yourself for taking the steps that you can take. It's really important to do that right. And now I know that that's important to my listeners, and so I'll try to formulate that concept more accurately and communicate it more clearly. It's a great privilege. It's a great privilege to be able to do this with the podcasts and the books, and it's great. It's great.